Have you ever seen a picture in an antique shop and wondered who that person was or whatever happened to them? Well, me too. So let's find out. I'm James from Forgotten Lines, and I found this picture in an antique shop here in good old Tennessee. I wondered if it would be possible to figure out who these kids were and maybe learn what kind of lives they had. I've been a genealogist now for over 10 years and wondered if I could use some of the tricks I've learned to figure out this mystery. And I did. Whenever I'm trying to determine who's in an antique photo, I try to look for at least 2 or more clues. And in this case, I had 4. Of course, we can use their clothes, hairstyle, photo type to give us a ballpark or a time frame. But that doesn't really help us narrow it down to specifics. Those can really help if we find a picture like this in Grandma's shoebox where we have a bit more context. But this picture came out of a random booth in an antique mall. So what could possibly help me find these kids' life stories? Well, I flipped it over and bam, not 1, not 2, but 3 names. Finding 1 or 2 names can help, but 3 is huge. No, I didn't have their last names, which would obviously have been better, but I have 3 apparent siblings and even a note. I must have been 9 or 10 years old. This can make a difference later when we're looking into records. So how can we determine who these people are based on first names alone? Well, it is possible to maybe figure it out from there, but we had another clue on the front. Castley, Nacogdoches, Texas. Nacogdoches. I'm a genealogist, not a geographist. Now we have 3 siblings born around the turn of the century in Nacogdoches, Texas. So off we go to a free site I like to use called FamilySearch.org. So at this point, I'm going to pull up my Family Search and key in all of the information that I have, which is quite a bit. We can put in the name, the approximate year, which based on their clothes and everything would put us around 1895 to 1915, give or take. Another clue that you could use is if you can find the photography studio. I like to use that. So we're putting in our siblings' names and click search, and looky there. Very first record that pops up is Maddie Lee in Nacogdoches, Texas. So on this census from 1920, we've got Texas, Nacogdoches. Good so far. Scroll, and whoops, went too far. I realized it. We go back up. And here is the Lee family with Maddie, Pearl, and Tucker in a nice little row. 12, 15, 17 years old in 1920, so that'd put us at around the years we need. Dad was a farmer, and I think we got him. So at this point, I went ahead and created an ancestry tree. Just by using the information that we have so far, it should be enough to get us some hints and clues and go from there. So looking at the 1910 census for Maddie Lee, she's still living with her parents because she's a little kid. This is a few years ago, so she's a little kid. She was born in 1903, so in 1910 she'd have been 7 years old. So in her profile, if we go down to the 1940 census, I've already figured out who she was married to. That took a little bit of time. I thought it would be easy, but it took a little while. She's married to a Hugh Kelly. On this census, it says that she is from Texas, and she works in a fish store, like a fish shop, something or another. So her husband, Hugh, I had to slow down and make sure I had the right guy. Well, when I pulled up Hugh on his World War II draft registration, which has a lot of information on it, including their current address. They moved to California at some point. He lists Tucker Lee as his name and address of person you may know, who will always know where he is. So for Maddie in 1930, a little bit back, she's living with Hugh in Los Angeles, and her husband worked for a lumber yard. So in FindAGrave, we're sure that we've got Hugh and Maddie got married, and they were together, and that is their current tombstone. So now we're looking at Pearl, or should I say Lily Pearl Lee. Found out her real first name was Lily. And she was born in 1904, died in about 2005. And in the 1930 census, she is living with her husband, Henry Hudson, Pearl Lee. And again, they were in California, so all the kids must have moved out to California, to the LA area. And just to have been made sure I had the right Pearl, on the 1940 census, she worked in a borax factory as a packer, and right there it shows her hometown as being Nacogdoches, Texas, which tells me that we are most likely looking at the correct Pearl. And again, she was married to a Mr. Henry Hudson, and they had one daughter. Looking at the 1950 census, this one is a little important because this one has Henry's occupation as a dairy farmer, and she was a dairy farm helper. So I imagine she worked the farm with him, and he was 66 this year. So if we go to Henry's profile that I worked up for him, his death certificate tells us that he was a dairy farmer. So this is the right guy. Henry Vernon Red, he went by Red Hudson, as a dairy farmer. He died from internal injuries, and there was an accident. He was working on a mowing machine when it rolled over him. So it didn't exactly cut him up, but it just rolled over him and hurt him bad enough to where he died from injuries. And this is his obituary, where it actually tells us more details about how he passed. And it was pretty sad. He was only 73. So he got up underneath his tractor to work on it, and it took off. It just started working and ran over him. And here's his draft registration and more confirmation that his wife was Pearl. But it doesn't give us a lot of serious confirmation, but it does list their hometown as Nacogdoches as well. So all of those paths lead to Rome, and it tells us that we are in Rome. And here is their marker as it is. So there is Pearl. And now we're moving on to Tucker, or David Tucker Lee, as his whole name. So here he is in 1930, living right next door to his dad, David Lee, and I think it's Maddie Jr. I didn't look too hard into their parents, but he's living next door at 18 years old as a farmer, probably on his dad's farm, working with him, or working on the same farm together. Whether it was theirs or not, I don't know. I didn't dig that deep into it. And in 1940, he is in LA again with everybody else, with his wife and daughter. And on the 1940, it gave his previous address, his hometown is Nacogdoches, so that tells us more of what we need to know. And in 1950, he's back home in Nacogdoches with his wife and son. And here he is a dairy farmer. He's working on a dairy farm, and his wife and son are listed as helpers. Could they have been on the same dairy farm as Henry and Pearl? Probably. And here is where it tells us where he is buried. So we're able to go to FindAGrave and look at, where they are buried together. And they have a pretty nice stone out there. And if you zoom in on it, it's nice and clean. It's in good shape. And he passed away in 1967 from internal complications. He had some stomach issues. And there you go. There is David Tucker. So when I find pictures like these, I think they're really interesting. And I have almost a dark curiosity of what these people's lives could have been, what they were, if anybody remembers them, if they lived a long time, or if they died shortly after the picture was taken. You just don't ever know. So if I can find one that has enough clues to push it along, I love looking into them and seeing what we can find. And in this case, we were able to find everything. We were able to find the kids' parents, their last name, their home address, the jobs they had, and in, I think, all of their cases, their actual reason for death, like how they died. We found that. And we were also able to find where they're buried, which is also really neat because it kind of shows an early part of their life and all the way through to the end. For these little kids, and in this picture that I found in a store in Tennessee, these kids will always be this age. But now, Now we know that they grew up and lived long, healthy lives and had families of their own and went through their own tragedies and heartaches. So if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and you'll be able to see more of these adventures.